The sport of horse racing started, it was in the 1600s. It's when King Charles II, and his very close friend and the treasurer of England, was raced horses for fun and recreation. They kept their horses in Cambridgeshire. And competed with one another. It was the Earl of Godolphin who was the most fortunate in looking for one of the fastest horses. And he found a horse which he bought indirectly from the King of France, which was Louis XV, who'd actually been given it, gifted it by one of the rulers in the Arab world. Now this horse, was never actually raced. But it was the first horse that was to become a thoroughbred horse. It was a horse of speed, essentially. And from that point on, it was all the horses that were allowed to race, essentially in English racing, were thoroughbred racehorses, and were actually descendants of either Godolphin or one of the other two horses that were racing that were there at that point. The Godolphin, incidentally, the Godolphin racing team is still in existence. It's now owned by the ruler of Dubai, and it's actually one of the more formidable racing teams and probably the most prestigious racing teams in the world. And many of the Godolphin racehorses are still kept in and around Cambridgeshire. Now, it was in the 1700s that the Queen Anne, which was a niece of Charles II, she decided to launch, to open up a racecourse. It was in the hunting grounds of Windsor Castle, on an area called Ascot. She built it into the first royal racecourse, owned by royalty, and every year she hosted an event there which encouraged all of the high society to bring their prestigious collections of racehorses and compete against one another. This was called the Royal Ascot Meeting, a race meeting, and it became one of the most prestigious high society events to attend, to be invited to in the 1700s. Now, during the 1700s, also there were many prestigious gentlemen's clubs, such as the Jockey Club, that started to that came into existence for gentlemen to discuss and to meet and discuss about racehorses. It became a big topic, and essentially the racehorse at this point became very much a prestigious status symbol for a lot of the wealthier people to project their wealth in England. Moving on to the 1800s, then the Royal Enclosure became the Royal Ascot, as it became a more significant meeting, more people attending. There was a special section of Royal Ascot which was set aside specifically for the Queen and her friends, who were also racehorse owners and their friends. Which was called the Royal Enclosure. And here in the Royal Enclosure, the most formidable racehorse owners, collectors of racehorses, would meet and compete against one another once a year. These racehorse owners started to come from all over the world to attend this very royal occasion and sporting event. During the 1800s also, there were many prestigious trophies and races that started to appear, including the Royal Ascot Gold Cup, which was a trophy presented by the monarch, the Queen or King themselves, to the winner of one of the more challenging races during the Royal Ascot race meeting. During the 1700s, it also became commonplace. The culture emerged for racing colours, racing silks as they were called, to be worn by the jockeys when they were racing, so that the audience the spectators could identify which of the racing teams were actually competing. One of the most famous racing colours was purple and red and orange, which was worn by the jockey for the Queen of England, or the monarchy at that point. These colours were red and purple, or often referred to as rose and violet, and were first selected by King Edward VII, who was the son of Queen Victoria. And he he chose these colours allegedly because of due to his or was inspired by his mother's Queen Victoria's penchant for rose and violet cream chocolates, which is one of those things. Yeah, and those colours have been handed down and are still worn right now by the Queen of England. It was the racing team for the Queen of England, the jockey of the Queen of England. The 1900s, it saw a shift. It was an acceleration in interest in English racing all around the world, and racing started in using the same format as English racing. Started in Singapore, Shanghai, Hong Kong, many places around the world, but using their own teams and using their own racehorses. But many of the racehorses were still thoroughbred racehorses, descendants from Godolphin and the other two horses. The second half of the 1900s saw racing challenged as a sport by a lot of the other more popular sports such as motor racing and and soccer, which actually was emerging as a more globalized sport, and were actually restylized for global audience, simplified. It's less technical. Meanwhile, horse racing still had, by this point, had around about 3,000 teams competing in just as many races. But the one thing that horse racing did was it always protected its integrity, and its traditions, and that was why it was very hard for horse racing to customize itself for a global audience, perhaps. Now in the 21st century, in the 2000s, it was with the launch and the release of RoyalEnclosure.com as a new platform for English racing. England racing has managed to now not only appeal to a global audience, but also to retain its heritage, its traditions and its integrity, as it starts to draw this global audience back to racing. The Royal Enclosure concept, the platform, very similar to back in 1600s. It just focuses, just draws you towards the 32 most prestigious, distinguished teams competing in the sport, including the ruler of Dubai, Godolphin. It's the Queen of England. It's Prince Khalid. It was Lord Webber. And a few other notable teams. Oh, sorry, Lady Bamford. It was Lady Rothschild. And a few other notable teams. It makes it simple for you to follow the sport on a daily basis and actually get involved. You can also purchase goods, accessories in these racing colours as you become more and more interested. And the belief is that this will accelerate interest globally in English horse racing and accelerate it back into a position as the top sport, one of the top sports in the world. We look forward to having you as one of our community. Thank you.